So we will be splitting everything into 4 lines, basically. The last one is a special category, though. First, we will have the BC Rich Lineage series. Then we will have the BC Rich Progyny series. These will be the 2 main lines of guitars. After that, we will have the BC Rich Hero line. This will be the Artist Signature series. And then we will have the BC Rich Vault. And yes, we are completely stealing that idea from Disney, you know, with those movie releases from the 90s and 2000s. But we will get back to that in just a little bit here. Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? This right here is my early 1980s BC Rich NJ Mockingbird. And boy, let me tell you guys, this thing is heavy, it's uncomfortable to play, and the neck dives like crazy. Yet, whenever I play this guitar, it just gives my playing some sort of unidentifiable swagger. Like, I mean, just look at this thing, man. It's over 40 years old, and I just really have to wonder, who was the Giga Chad who wandered into a store and ordered a hot pink Mockingbird 40 years ago thinking, but why do I own this 40-year-old guitar? Why not a brand new BC Rich? Well, besides the fact that I just think it's kind of cool to have a guitar this old that still plays and feels amazing, I own this model of Mockingbird because I hate the book headstocks that basically every single Mockingbird that was made after this comes with. I also wanted a pink guitar, right? So basically my only choice here, if I wanted a pink BC Rich, not with a book headstock, would be a custom shop order, which easily would cost more than my car, or go look used. Now, luckily for me, I was able to find this guitar for sale locally. Shout out Marco. This guitar may be a little beat up here and there, but it just oozes soul, and most importantly, it does not have that same terrible book headstock. It rather comes with what they call the curved headstock, what I like to call the bottle opener. Hell, you know, I would have even taken one of those with like a harpoon headstock or like a 6 in a row straight headstock, but I digress, right? And so this brings us to the first range in the series of BC Rich guitars, the Lineage series. Now, let me just get this out of the way. Who am I? I'm just an asshole with a YouTube channel. What business experience do I have in guitars? Absolutely next to none. This is all just a big thought experiment about a guitar brand, which I really happen to love and enjoy very much. I have been sort of pondering this idea for a video for a while now, ever since KDH made his excellent video on BC Rich about a half a year ago. And let me just say, this is not to discredit or disparage the current BC Rich management. I'm sure there are tons and tons of factors that I have just no clue, couldn't even begin to fathom about this whole thing. I just really love BC Rich guitars. I'm not employed by them. This isn't sponsored by them at all. But BC Rich, send me an email. So yeah, I am totally unsure of what is happening at BC Rich. You know, it really seems like the last few years, this current range of guitars has essentially been the exact same for like 3 years, pretty much ever since Ogfish made his video on it. And most recently, too, I noticed that the biggest Canadian guitar retailer stopped carrying them. So it'd be really hard for me to even order a brand new BC Rich guitar if I wanted to. I'd probably have to get it in the States, order it off there, you know, pay USD conversion, and now tariffs and everything like that. So basically, BC Rich is almost sort of non-existent in Canada currently. I also find that their current lineup kind of strange, too, never mind the fact that it just hasn't been updated. It sort of seems like half finished and confusing. All right, yeah, so like let's take a look at the BC Rich website here. So I mean, you got like 3 lines, but I don't know, man. I feel like the current BC Rich lineup's just kind of boring. Like, you know, sure, these crackle finishes are kind of nice, right? But you know, what if I don't want a book headstock here? You know what I mean? Same with the bitches. Most of these come with the bees, excuse me. Most of these come with the book headstocks too. Like I don't really want those. You know what I mean? To me, whenever I do it, I feel like I just have to go to Reverb or Gear Exchange or someplace like that and look at all the BC Riches. Right? You know, just scroll through BC Rich and look at all the absolutely sick like used guitars that they have, man. Like there's the BC Rich Blaster, the Telecaster too. That thing's hilarious. Damn, look at this thing too. Tri pickup. But yeah, like $6,000, like $7,000, you know what I mean? Like that's crazy. So yeah, this one has the harpoon headstock. So, you know, what if I want a BC Rich soloist with the harpoon headstock or like a reverse, you know, why should I have to do that? Why would I have to pay $7,000 when you can undercut the used market basically? You can even do some cool stuff with more like the art style guitars. But like, man, like look at this thing. Look at how cool this thing is too. Color matched, reversed headstock, maple fretboard. Like let people customize their guitars. Why am I limited to just, you know, these kind of crappy, boring guitars? And look at this, man. Okay, look at almost $5,000, $4,800 for this. And you don't even get a color matched headstock, bro. Like what is this? Bolt on neck too? Like, okay, so what separates this Iron Bird then from this Iron Bird, right? This is a green crackle, but it also comes with purple crackle for only $1,500. Maybe the reverse headstock, Kaler. Like, I don't know why. Like, why are you undercutting your own models here? It's just such a weird lineup. I do like their Extreme and Prophecy line. I think these are pretty cool. You can definitely carry these forward. But again, you know, 2023, like a lot of these haven't been updated. We're almost be moving into the 2026 model year now. Like what's going on here, right? Handcrafted. Why are these handcrafted models so expensive? You know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing here? Who are we marketing ourselves to? And this is really like the tip of the iceberg when it comes to weirdness in the current BC Rich lineup. You know, BC Rich also basically has been completely absent on social media for over a year now. So, you know, who really knows what's going on here? And besides the Prophecy line, which I really actually like, I really think the current BC Rich lineup is pretty boring, and being boring is perhaps the biggest sin at all for a company like BC Rich. Now, why do I like BC Rich guitars so much?
I just think they're neat.
But in addition to that, these guitars just have some sort of untamed brashness and bravado to them. It's like, yeah, I'm playing a brightly colored, extremely pointy guitar. The fuck are you gonna do about it? And I think we all basically associate these BC Rich guitars with metal. Maybe think like I do of Chuck Schuldiner, perhaps CC DeVille Poison, or Hyde from X Japan, Trey from Morbid Angel, perhaps for even a more recent example, basically everybody from Blood Incantation. Which, I mean, the fact that the Blood Incantation guys don't have a signature model is actually kind of like inexcusable to me, but we'll talk about that when we get to the hero line just in a couple minutes here, guys. To me, BC Rich are the metal guitars, and the swagger and mystique surrounding them is just something very, very special and sort of unique to BC Rich. Now, I think for years, big problem, BC Rich has thought that they were just a bigger company than they were, sort of trying to treat themselves like an Ibanez or Jackson, right? Expanding the guitar lines right to the very bottom of the entry-level prices, you know, all the way up to the crazy like 10 grand custom shop builds, and in the process, seemingly cheapen their entire brand to a crazy degree. I, like many of you when I was younger, thought of BC Rich as that company that made those like hideous, terrible, and basically unplayable warlocks of the noughties and early 2010s, right? Six String TV made a really great video about this sort of cheapening phenomenon about it, right? But basically they guttered their brand reputation with extremely cheap crap guitars, and it really seems that only lately has everyone seemed to have forgiven BC Rich for their sins. And just remember that these guys made and still make great, fantastic metal guitars, right? However, I think the people who also like BC Rich are also like me, probably very picky. And lots of the comments of the latest Taylor Danley video, which shout out Taylor, great channel. You see that everyone or a lot of people lamenting that the Warlock that he's playing, which is super cool in that white crackle finish and has that reverse pointed headstock, a lot of people wish that it had the other headstock, the Beast or like the Widow headstock. So then why not let them choose what headstock they want? What I am suggesting here is something that KDH or KDH recommended in this video, comparing them to Kiesel, which essentially are operating currently as more or less, right, a made in the USA custom shop, right? But instead of having sort of unlimited options for whatever you want, you select from a predefined list of options regarding body shapes, colors, headstocks, pickups, etc. And the seemingly endless amounts of permutations of all these choices makes it so that your guitar that you choose is basically a custom shop build, very bespoke, and for way less money than like any of the other USA custom shops. So essentially what we're going to be doing is stealing this idea entirely. And yes, I know that it's not as easy just to say, okay, we're just going to be moving all our manufacturing to the USA. Everything else we are doing made in India stuff is just out of the question. But again, just think of this as like an armchair quarterback, armchair general, or maybe even like an alternate history thing where maybe BC Rich did this earlier around the same time as Kiesel. Again, this is all sort of fantasy, headcanon, or just like an idea, right? Pretend that I've just put in charge of BC Rich like 5 years ago. Where would I have wanted the company to be right now? So then for the first line here, the Lineage, we are essentially just going to be completely copying the Kiesel method, including being in the same pricing range. BC Rich will no longer be making cheapo guitars, which, to be fair, they haven't been doing as well. Instead, we're making this brand of BC Rich sort of like an exclusive, like mid to high range guitar, right? Think made in Japan, Jackson's, or like Ibanez Premium or Prestige lines, right? But now instead of just buying whatever the company feels to make, you get to create your own custom BC Rich that you always wanted. Now, because this is the Lineage line, this will sort of be like an alternate history line where you could order the guitar that you wish you could have in like 1985, right? We're gonna take BC Rich's most popular shapes in here. Again, the others will just be in the vault, but again, we'll talk about that till we get there. So in my mind, maybe the company has different metrics, but you take these basic shapes, right? You take the Warlock, the Gunslinger, or an S style, Mockingbird, Ironbird, the Bitch, the Junior V, and maybe the Eagle, although I'm unsure how actually popular that shape is. You know, might be a case to be added to the vault or not. I digress. This could be flexible. So you take these 7 shapes, and next we're going to have all the various headstocks over the years. So basically what I want is for you to be able to take any BC Rich shape and put on any headstock that you want. You want a Junior V with a harpoon? You got it. A Gunslinger with a Widow? Fantastic. How about an Ironbird with a Bookcell headstock? Hey, it's your money, chief, right? Colors as well should be equally as expansive as Kiesel's lineup. You want a dark sage green matte BC Rich bitch with a bottle opener headstock? Hey bro, it's yours. You can get it, no problem. Basically what I'm trying to do here, right, is compete with BC Rich's own used market. Why spend thousands on a used one from Reverb and deal with all that uncertainty and people when you can just order the exact one from the company itself for probably around the same price point? You want that cool cheetah print stealth? Well, instead of spending $5,000 on Reverb, order it for like $2,700, $3,000 from BC Rich directly. Oh, and by the way, I would also like to see the neck dive issues directly addressed and fixed on all these shapes. I had an Ironbird that neck dove even worse than my Mockingbird, but supposedly if you move the strap button on the Ironbirds from where it is to a different spot, this issue is solved. So I'd want every single guitar shape here, the neck dive solved, right? When we're going through the process, let's just make these guitars comfortable to play. Maybe it has to be different chambering or maybe weights inside the guitar, whatever, right? Make these beautiful machines easy to play and not falling all over. Now, of course, in addition to body shapes and headstocks and colors, I would also like to see different fretboard inlays, right? You got dots, Bayside dots, the chevrons, clouds, or the diamonds. I would also like to see options for like a 7-string model as well. Maybe you don't have to go full 8-string, but you know, Floyd Roses, Kahlers, Evertunes, Hardtails, different scale lengths too. I'd love to go from 24.75 all the way to like baritones. Basically, you do as many options that would be economically viable. So to recap, right, it's not the 80s anymore, but people still want it to be. Let someone order the bright yellow Mockingbird or the fluorescent green Warlock from that video for Talk Dirty to Me. Why not, right? We are turning the BC Rich line into like a Kiesel-esque made in the USA custom shop, which comes with the core BC Rich shapes and identity, just with the flexibility to be very, very picky and make people like me happy. So this does 2 things. It directly addresses the fact that BC Rich is now completely getting away from its lower priced crap models. That's completely done with. Our reputation has been soiled enough. We're just going to ignore that. This also leans more into the history with these older shapes, as well as all the different colors and headstocks you could do, as well as undercuts the BC Rich used market, which for a lot of people like me is where you only look for BC Rich guitars because their current lineup, again, besides the Prophecy series, is pretty boring. This gives some excitement back into BC Rich. People can go on the website and play with all the different permutations and daydream about making all these warlocks, whatever, you know what I mean, right? Let the people have their fun while retaining some history and becoming a much higher upper scale brand. So now let's move on to the second line. This would be the BC Rich Progyny. And yes, I know the names that I chose here are very similar to the current lineup names, but like any good newly installed CEO, I'm just gonna be changing stuff for the sake of change. Here in the Progyny series, we're gonna be selling pre-built guitars again, but we're gonna be doing the same thing that they're kind of doing with the Prophecy lineup. To be honest, I love a lot of these models that they're selling here. Maybe a little bit less abalone for me, but basically you let the guys or the engineers or the guitarists, luthiers at BC Rich go crazy and really make some audacious and really forward-looking guitars. I'm talking, let's do like 8-string multi-scale Warlocks. What about a 30-inch baritone Mockingbird intended to be a bass 6, basically? Let the designers go absolutely crazy. We already have the history locked down firm in the Lineage line, right? Whatever they want to do with it here, right? You can already sort of see that with some of like the Shred Zilla lines and stuff like that. You can go crazy multi-scales, you know, tri-pickups, abalone, Maybe even introduce some new body shapes as well, but really try to focus on, you know, modern metal stuff like 7 and 8 string multi-scale guitars. Like a lot of people are playing these, and you want to get more people, new people into the BC Rich family who maybe aren't all, you know, like 80s and 90s death metal guys. You know what I mean? But to make these different from any of the other BC Rich models, I would like there to be like a few Progyny only features. You know, maybe this would be like a very distinctly bespoke fretboard inlays to signify that this is like from the Progyny. Maybe color matched inlays. Anyway, something very unique and distinct that's on every Progyny line so that people who buy the Progyny guitars can, you know, flex on the other people, right? I got a Progyny, right? This line would be priced maybe slightly higher than some of the Lineage guitars. Of course, right, depending on your order specs. But, you know, basically, we're trying to now compete with people playing, you know, like the Ibanez 7 and 8 string, multi-scales, you know, the ESPs, you know, and the Kiesels too, right? A lot of the Kiesel multi-scale stuff. Basically, all the new guitar tech and stuff coming out. True temperament frets too, you could even put in here too. This is the lineup where the engineers and designers at BC Rich could just go crazy and maybe really make some waves by making these very audacious and brash guitars. So now what this does is it sort of addresses the problem that BC Rich being a brand firmly stuck in the past. Now we're going to be hopefully bringing in new customers with like a sort of new modern identity while hanging on to the Lineage, right? BC Rich Lineage series. But this way you can get people to come in, maybe they see, you know, a guy in deathcore playing an 8-string multi-scale BC Rich. And then they go on the website and they say, oh, I can make my own BC Rich guitar. I've always wanted a Warlock or something like that. Taking one of the lineups and not looking at the past at all, instead looking directly forward into the future. So then, boys, now we move towards the Hero line. This is basically just a much cooler name for signature models of various BC Rich artists. And no, Chuck Schuldiner Stealth would not be included here. His model will be in the vault. First thing I would do if I was CEO of BC Rich, I would give the Blood Incantation guys each their own signature model, bases included. Call them the Blood Birds or the Incantation Birds and just let them design whatever, right? I mean, Blood Incantation, probably one of the biggest newer death metal bands, and they've probably done more for BC Rich than like anybody else in the last 5 years. So let's reward the loyalty, right? So maybe give Trey from Morbid Angel a signature too, called the Morbid Bird or something. Give him a 7-string. You know, expanding your model range into more 7 and 8 string options would enable them to give and get more modern artists on hand, right? Maybe once Isaac from Knocked Loose is done with Ibanez, you could give him one. Call it the Loose Bird. You know, you see what I'm doing here, right? You give it each one like a memorable bird name. I don't know, you could do something cool with that stuff. Maybe give the guys some Sanguisuga Bog signature too, call it the Bog Bird or something, right? But yeah, basically I'm just completely spitballing here. So to realize your position as a brand almost exclusively catering to extreme metal guys and like position yourselves inside some scenes here, get some goodwill with the community. Anyways, regardless, this lineup should and have yearly refreshes, maybe even give some signatures to some YouTubers. Who knows? Lastly, we are looking at the Vault series. Basically, we are just stealing the very successful Disney concept of releasing old movies every few years with this sort of ambiguous gimmick of them potentially going back into the vault forever and you never getting a chance to buy them again. And we're applying this to guitars, right? So BC Rich has been selling the Chuck Stealth basically every year. You know, take it off the market, bring it back in a year or two and make it like an event. Time it with an anniversary of an album or something like that. Basically what we're doing is inducing some scarcity, some artificial scarcity, right? Oh, you can only buy the Stealth for the next year. Other than that, it's going back into the BC Rich vault for perhaps the next 10 years and you won't be able to buy it for another 10 years. Give it some artificial scarcity, some incentive for people to maybe make a purchase now rather than later. Basically just create artificial scarcity by implying that you may never ever get a chance to buy any of these shapes ever again. So here's where you can bring back all these other great BC Rich shapes, right? The Stealth, the Widow, the Beast, the War Beast, the Draco, the Igniter, the Virgin, Virgo, and many of the other ones, right? And perhaps most importantly, the Wave. You know, maybe bring back 2 or 3 of these every year. You know, maybe in some more, you know, pre-built historical variants, and then maybe you could do some crazy Progyny ones, and then add those body shapes to the Lineage custom lines for that year or something like that. You know, you could do some really cool things with that. So just say, for example, this year they're bringing the War Beast and the Stealth out of the vault. Make a huge deal out of it, lots of social media posts, send them out to people, You know, maybe make some social media posts on the BC Rich YouTube channel about, you know, artists who have played these shapes in the past. So basically the stealth comes out of the vault. You know, you can sell the Chuck version as like a historical version, maybe like 2 or 3 other pre-built ones, maybe put like a 7-string stealth on the Progyny line. And of course, right, then just let people do whatever with the stealth Lineage custom order. I assume most of these would sort of be interchangeable parts. I assume that's how Kiesel does it, right? And if any of these shapes are very popular and successful, you can sort of just leave them in the Lineage line sort of quietly, add them to the regular lineup, right? You can sort of use this as a way to test interest in some of these shapes, bringing these back. Maybe now people are ready for the, you know, Kerry King War Beast V again. You know what I mean? Use this as a way to test shapes and to create artificial scarcity and again compete with the used market. Why would you go buy this Chuck stealth from like 1990 when you can order one that's just coming fresh out of the vault? You know what I mean? So then boys, there you have it. My completely uneducated, unknowledgeable, woefully ignorant armchair quarterback business plan. The goal here is to recognize BC Rich as a niche, almost like exclusively metal guitar brand, and position ourselves from the very disastrous reputation of the past, get rid of that, and lean into the seemingly now new resurgence of interest in the BC Rich name and lineage by letting people order whatever they want and recognize sort of the success that Kiesel is having currently. So let me know your thoughts down below. And as always, I've been Varvis. Cheers.